No, it's not going to be a boring soup. That's just the base. You put the chicken in. You've got to add other flavors. Carrots and celery are just the base of a soup. Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and this week we watched Grosse Pointe Blank, released in 1997 and starring John Cusack, Minnie Driver, Alan Arkin, Jeremy Piven, Dan Aykroyd, and a lot of other Cusacks. We follow Martin Blank, yes, real name, as he returns to his old town to attend the 10-year high school reunion. 10 years. Now, is it just me, or does 10 years not seem that long for all these people to have the professions they have? Martin is a contract killer who's having a crisis of confidence, and maybe, just maybe, seeing his old school friends and the love of his life will just help him. But again, he has been in this profession for nearly 5 years. Is that enough time to have a crisis of confidence? There's a lot to say about this film, a lot good and some bad. But if you take anything away from this film, it's the banger of a soundtrack. This film has the soundtrack of soundtracks. The specials, The Clash, The Violent Femmes, Guns N' Roses. I mean, the list of great songs is endless. This film is quirky, funny, and at times a little ridiculous, but it's still a fun ride. Now, before we say anything else, Liam, anything to add about the soundtrack?
No, it's fucking awesome. And it's weird. You know, like last week, because last week we had another bang of a soundtrack and we did Over the Top. Now, that one was kind of like ironic love. You know, it was like, oh, this has got fucking Kenny Loggins and stuff like that. How did I not know
that's 80s? That's 80s bangers or anything. This fucking thing is just it's ridiculous. All over the shop. Yeah,
but this is like if you were putting together an ultimate 80s playlist, which works in tone with the film because a lot of it is looking back. In many respects, for all the Hitman chat and everything, it is the ultimate do-over movie. It's about getting a chance to almost go back to the 80s, to, you know, go back to that big decision you make with the girl you potentially fell in love with, but with that 10-year knowledge, they go back to a like original bedroom, they go into the same prom, all that jazz. And of course, that's a conscious decision to make this 80s soundtrack. But my God, like the weird thing is, growing up with this movie, the soundtrack never caught my attention, which seems bizarre now. So when I was doing the research for this, I saw someone say, our Grosse Pointe Blank has got one of the top 5 all-time soundtracks. I was like, what the fuck? Grosse Pointe Blank? And from the moment the movie starts, I was like, that's a good song. That's a good song. And it just keeps going. And it almost should be too much. There are so many songs, and so many of them are just unbelievable, like top tier stuff, elite level 80s music, that it should become overwhelming. And it just doesn't. It somehow works for this film.
I'll give you an example of not, as you've just said, about not understanding the soundtrack or realizing how much of a banger it was until you watched it again. I never got in my life why she does the Jamaican accent when she answers the door and she says, you can't come in. And I'm like, why is she like, what? Where does the Jamaican accent come from? Because I watched it before. I watch it now and I'm like, fuck me. She's listening to your, you're wondering now by the specials. The fucking start of that song is a Jamaican guy going, you can't come in. But it's just. Literally.
And I think it's the age thing. Like, I probably wasn't massively into 80s music. Like, when I was, I would have watched this when I was like 15, 16. I was probably very much, or like late 90s, early 2000s. I was getting into like modern rock. All of a sudden, I've just found like the Foo Fighters, Green Day. You know, we've got like new metal just around the corner, all that bollocks. Like, in terms of my listening habits at that time, it's very much on point for what was being released at the time. And if I was listening to anything older, it probably would have been like early 90s grunge, shit like that.
Yeah.
So, this kind of 80s highfalutin pop music, should we say, for the most part. I know there's Guns N' Roses and stuff like that as well.
I was going to say highfalutin. You had most of the songs were from the specials and The Clash and The Violent Femmes.
I know, but there's a hipster nature to this playlist. Make no mistake about it. You know, this is somebody who loves music and wants you to know about it, which is absolutely fine. But it's all stuff that probably went over my head when I was 17, 18. Not now when I'm 42 and I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh my fucking days, how did I miss all this? This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But one of the other things you mentioned about the fact that they're all having these like existential crises when they're like in their early 30s.
Oh, I actually not early 30, they're 28.
20, I actually found that massively reassuring because I had my midlife crisis when I was 30. I had like a meltdown when I was 30. And I'm usually cool as a cucumber. I cruise through 40, no problems at all. When I turned 30, I had a fucking wobble, dude. And it was like, maybe not a John Cusack wobble like in this film, because nobody has an existential crisis quite like John Cusack. And he's very much a large part of the reason this movie works. But yeah, when I was watching it, I was like, I totally get this. Not the contract killer thing, but the idea of having a bit of a meltdown in your late 20s, early 30s is like, oh, yeah, I found that very relatable.
Do you know why I think he is having a wobble, as you say? Because I questioned it. And again, I didn't question this last time I watched it, but he's not a very good hitman. His first two jobs are botched.
Yeah, they're
He ki-
disasters.
yeah, he kills the cyclist to save the guy. And then
Mm-hmm.
without even checking if the guy has made it to safety, he puts his gun away. And then just Dan Aykroyd I don't know, Dan Aykroyd like the ultimate video game handguns because those things did not need reloading at all.
And
And then
did you
he's,
notice both of them when they shoot, they do the thing like they're playing with toy guns, where they don't
yeah,
just shoot, they kind of shake their hands back and forth
yeah.
as they shoot, as if they're kind of like pushing the bullets forward. Aesthetically, it looks magnificent. Practically, I'm sure it doesn't work at all.
Not at all. And then the other one where he's meant to make it look like a heart attack, and that guy died from lead poisoning, as it were,
Fantastic.
because his sleep patterns suggested he's a deep sleeper at that time of night. Like that was elaborate as fuck, mate. And it just
It's certainly what it hints at the idea, though, that he kind of plans these things out, but that, like you say, he is a bit of a buffoon. But I think the problem is he's a hitman, but he's just too emotionally involved. Like that's the issue. Like he likes to think of himself as this cool, calm, calculated character. But in reality, like those emotions are always just under the surface. And again, that's a John Cusack classic, isn't it? He's always
yeah,
ready to burst. And that kind of plays into the idea. And it's something I never really thought of before. The idea that this is the second part of an unofficial trilogy alongside Say Anything and High Fidelity. Now, I've had a real think about this. I'm not sure about the High Fidelity thing. I'm not sure in what world kind of Mike from Grosse Point Blank becomes Rob. I get the idea that thematically they're going for like a slow loss of hope trilogy here.
sorry, who's Mike from Grosse Point Blank?
Oh, is that not his name? Oh shit! What am I on about?
Martin.
Martin. Sorry, did I say Mike?
Sorry,
I do apologize, Martin.
that's okay because I thought there was a character I missed. I was like, what
No,
the
no,
fuck
no,
am I
Martin. I
thinking?
just got his name
Okay,
wrong. Sorry. I can absolutely see the evolution of Lloyd Dobler from Say Anything becoming Martin in this film. You know, if you change some of the names, I can because you know he even did like the I'm not sure if it was karate or kickboxing or kung fu, whatever the
yeah,
fuck it was in that film. Him becoming this character, I'm not sure if I see that evolution to Rob, other than maybe if Debbie left him after this film, he might just become really depressed. Oh, I'm not a hitman anymore. I'm just going to open a record shop. But
so
those films are like, I just think of them as the ultimate John Cusack trilogy, rather
yeah,
than, the idea that they could almost be the same character. What I do, however, believe, the more I watch this film, I'm like, man, if you changed one or two words, a handful of references, this could so easily exist in the John Wick universe.
yeah,
It's literally, if you make the argument that he could easily be Lloyd Dobler from Say Anything if he changed his name and a few other bits and bobs, I think it would actually be easier to move this movie directly into the John Wick universe, because it's not they don't deal with it in the same way that they deal with it in John Wick, but they've got this whole kind of cabal of hitmen. They're all like these massive characters. You've got Dan Aykroyd talking about the Union. They reference the gods instead of, God, what is it in John Wick? It's not the elders. Like if you change it from the gods to the elders, you're like, this could absolutely be a John Wick spin-off. I would love to see John Cusack show up in John Wick 5. That'd be fucking dope. But
so sorry, going back to what you said about sequels and stuff, the unofficial sequel to this, or what felt like the unofficial sequel, was actually a 2008 film called War Inc. with John
yeah, I
Cusack,
remember that.
because he plays again a hitman, and I think Dan Aykroyd's in it, and I think Alan Arkin's in it as well at some point and stuff. So I think that was like some sort of spiritual sequel, but unfortunately it just became a very shit film.
Well, I think that's the problem.
Good.
When you talk about those three films, like Say Anything, Grosse Point Blank, and High Fidelity, you can make an argument for those being maybe his three best movies. I'm sure, there's a bunch of other people who point in that direction, but not just his three best movies. The three which, like, if you were trying to show somebody, what does it mean to be Cusacky? Because there is a Cusacky-ness, and it's definitely prevalent in this film. And I think those would be the three films I'd show you to go, like, this is his vibe. He's got that, like, unique energy and likable intelligence. He does the whole strong vulnerability thing very well.
Yeah.
He's, like, effortlessly cool while still being filled with nervous energy. The only way I could describe it when I was watching him, he somehow pulls off being confident and uncomfortable at the same time. Like
Yeah.
that seems to be unique to Cusack, and that runs through all of those films.
For
And
a
I
guy
think,
that's very loquacious, as it were, likes to
yeah,
talk, he hates to talk to people. He always feels uncomfortable when he's talking to people. Like the conversation he's having with his old teacher, the conversation he's having with Jeremy Piven,
that's
anybody
a
that,
great example. The one with the teacher, that is the perfect example of it. Where, like you said, he's so loquacious, he's so confident, and they've got this natural back and forth, but it still has this tiny, slight air of awkwardness to it.
yeah,
And I'm just like, I don't even know how they've written it in. It's just like that's not on the page. That's in the performances, and that comes from Cusack. But the reason it's so Cusack is because while this was written initially by somebody else, it was optioned by John Cusack's production company, who immediately went to work to basically writing this for John Cusack. You know, you talk about like star vehicles, movies which were essentially made for a movie star. That's what's happened here. And Piven's part of that production company. And they were just like, all right, we've got this great idea. Now we're going to make it the ultimate John Cusack vehicle. And you can feel that all over the page.
yeah. It's so. I love it as well. You said it's so Cusacky. It has to be the fact that there were four Cusacks in this film as well,
I
which
didn't
is
even know. I didn't even notice
insane.
the other two. Jesus Christ! Talk
So
about nepotism.
there's John Cusack, obviously Joan Cusack, and Cusack and Bill Cusack as well. The only ones that didn't appear was one of his sisters and his father, Susie and Dick. But they've all got IMDb pages, so they've all been in something somewhere down the line.
Fantastic.
Do you know what I said about when I watched this? I've picked out a bunch of things
Mhm.
that I like the soundtrack and stuff I hadn't heard before. I'm gonna go through my. I want to go through my before we move on too much into this film and say how good it is. I want to go through my list of things that are weird to me.
Mhm, mhm,
And yes, this is kind of like a meatball sub in Point Break kind of thing. The layout of John Cusack's office is very
mhm,
strange because he comes from the main door into his office.
mhm,
You have to go through another door to get to the secretary. So if they have any
mhm,
to say visitors, the visitors
mhm.
come into Cusack's office, go into the secretary's office, talk to Joan Cusack, and then come back into his office to talk to him.
That is weird. See, I didn't notice that, although I had initial concerns. And just be clear, I going into this film, I had worries, and those only kind of increased when I suddenly realized I had the DVD. I brought the
Yeah.
DVD case, and I think we talked about it last week. My concern was like, oh, this is going to feel a bit too 90s. That was the big concern. And then I saw the DVD case. I was like, fuck me, that looks very 90s. Then I put it on, and the opening of the film has some very what I'd refer to as late 90s kind of cuts. And
Yeah.
there's a few kind of Dutch angles in their office in particular. I was like, oh no, this is going to feel like an old movie, or certainly one of its time. The Office is what was one of those issues. Just the good news was that all disappears as you go into the film, and I think it's because with The Office they were going for like a noir feel. Like
Yeah.
nothing else in the movie is shot the way that Office is shot. It's shot in darkness. The angles are strange, and like you said, I think they've just put, I don't know, the way they wanted to film it over any thought of common sense. Because, like you said, it doesn't make any difference, any sense. Sorry, that somebody would walk in and see John Cusack first, and then go and see the secretary. It is insane.
The other one, the chair in Alan Arkin's office that John
Oh,
Cusack sat in, right?
fuck me!
That chair is so low, his knees are so high into his
John
throat.
Cusack is like, and I can feel the pain as another tall gentleman. John Cusack's what, like 6'3", 6'4"?
Yeah.
It is the ultimate power move. If I went into a psychiatrist and that was the seat he'd give me, I'd be like, fuck you, dude. This is so, it's the worst chair of all time.
It
If
was
you want to make
awful.
somebody feel like a bitch, like I can imagine if you went into like Donald Trump's office, that's the seat he would have you sitting on.
Do you think he got that chair to get rid of Cusack because he didn't want to be his therapist anymore? He thought,
And
I'll
that
try and
has to
make
be
him
the
as
answer.
uncomfortable as I can.
It is
And
upsetting,
Cusack,
but again, it might be something of the time, like the late 90s. That's when like beanbag chairs and shit started coming back in. Everyone had a fucking beanbag chair in the late 90s,
yeah,
early
I get
2000s.
that. But what that chair was, that was like something from the fucking Spanish Inquisition.
Oh, it's
That
bad.
chair
It was
was,
bad.
oh,
Like about everything in this film, that upset me the most, that goddamn chair.
two more. Why was there a woman in a wedding dress at the reunion?
No fucking idea. No idea. I was hoping you'd have an answer. I've got that
No,
question. I was like,
didn't have a
did I miss
clue.
something?
No, because she wasn't there at the beginning when they're all dancing. When you get to the end and there's the slow dance, there's just a woman in a wedding dress.
I thought maybe, because I've heard this story and it's not on any of the DVDs or Blu-rays or anything like that, that they ostensibly shot 3 versions of this movie, like
I read that as well.
Anchorman style,
Yeah.
and it's like 3 different tones, which actually I think probably paved the way for this being so tonally perfect. I think it's in many respects is that they kept shooting in different ways and went, what's the best way to go? And they found that if anything, the zanier way to go, because this could be a very low key film. If you just turned the dial down and everything, it could be a much more serious film. And I can imagine if that's the way they've done it. There's a cut of this film which is much more violent, much more serious. I'm glad they didn't go that way, obviously. And maybe because of the way they've gone with that, there are just a couple of strands, like the lady in the fucking wedding dress, where like that's probably on the cutting room floor, an explanation for that, but they couldn't shoot around it or something. It's very bizarre though.
Finally, the one that really, and I'm not an expert in bombs in any way, shape, or form. But
thanks for clearing that.
Yeah,
You're not a bomb
just
scientist.
In case,
yeah, just in case anyone thought you was.
But I don't understand how putting C4 with some detonators in a microwave doesn't explode until the microwave reaches 0. Does the ding cause the bomb to explode?
Oh, of course.
It's not a timer on the bomb. It's a microwave. As soon as the radiation hits it, shouldn't it explode? Not count down?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. I didn't even notice that. I was just like anyone else, like, oh, that's convenient. I didn't even cross my mind. But now they've said it, that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, it looks cool. The whole
it looks cool,
in the
and you've got the countdown, so you know exactly like when it's meant to explode. But it shouldn't explode on ding.
No,
like the microwave going ding shouldn't cause it to explode.
No, it really shouldn't. It makes 0 sense. It makes 0. See, now they've brought that up. That's arguably more egregious because there's probably a story we're just not seeing about the wedding dress, whereas that fundamentally makes 0 sense.
I really, I was questioning it for ages, going, as soon as the radiation hits that detonator, wouldn't it explode?
Maybe I was just blindsided by the fact that there was suddenly action in this film because
oh my God, it is, yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with that. It's just like, it opens, yes, he's a hitman and all that jazz, and you have this kind of noir opening, and as I said, he tries to kill someone. It's almost a little bit Mission Impossible in that respect. And then, make no mistake, for like 30 minutes, it becomes a John Hughes movie. 100%. It becomes a John Hughes movie. Instead of Shermer, Illinois, we're stuck in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which I actually really love. Like, it's a very different look at Detroit. You know, we're used to a very gritty realism when it comes to Detroit. And I know this is like a 25-minute drive from downtown, but it's still classed as the wider Detroit suburbs. It's a very different look at that world. You know, we're accustomed. How many times have we seen suburban Chicago, for instance? Yeah. I can't think of many films where we're seeing kind of suburban Detroit, for instance.
No, you ever mentioned Detroit or anything like that, and it's dark and gritty
exactly. And you know, you're seeing a very affluent side of Michigan there. But for 30 minutes, it's so successful in doing that even though I've seen this film so many times in the past, when suddenly Benny the Jet shows up at the convenience store, I was like, oh yeah, this is an action movie. I mean, well, at least in part.
Well, no, he's a hitman, so he should be actually doing some fighting or shooting or something. Absolutely.
It does it twice. Like, there's that moment where I was like, fuck, that shootout felt like it came out of nowhere. And then at the end, when you find out Debbie, Minnie Driver's father, is actually the hit, I was just like, oh, I totally forgot there was even a hit. I was so invested in their relationship, and the fucking chemistry between Cusack and Minnie Driver is off the scale. And I think you said last week that you were kind of in love with Minnie Driver growing up when you watched this film. And I was like, oh, it never really clicked for me. Watching this now, I was just like, oh my God. What like, it was
I see
Minnie Driver is on the same level as the soundtrack, whereas like, how did I miss this? I am both in love with the soundtrack and Minnie Driver in this movie now. And I was like, I can't believe I wasn't when I was 18.
Yeah.
She's fantastic. But yeah, their chemistry, I mean, it absolutely makes the film. But this is a movie, and you mentioned in the intro about having this like top tier supporting cast. The chemistry is everywhere. And a lot of it obviously is with Cusack, who's just a machine when it comes to chemistry. But he's got amazing chemistry with Alan Arkin. He's got fantastic chemistry with Piven, brilliant chemistry, obviously, with his sister, and then again with Minnie Driver. The scenes with Dan Aykroyd are fucking knockouts. It's just all over the place.
It's so much fun, his chemistry with Arkin, because he's actually only in the room with Arkin once. On screen together once. The rest of it is just via phone.
Yeah.
So, the chemistry that comes from them is absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to give an honorable mention about the things that I noticed. It wasn't really going to be on the list, but you mentioned about the action and stuff. His suitcase full of guns. I'm so glad he managed to have a hotel room that had a vent big enough to store his suitcase full of guns.
Yeah, me too. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Because that might have been awkward if he didn't have one that could hide his suitcase full of guns.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to believe that maybe he's done the research, but I think he's just absolutely lucked out there.
But going back to, oh my God, from the moment you see Minnie Driver just talking over the radio station, why are all the good men dead? Is it in the
Mhm.
heart or in the head? I was straight back to like when I was 15, 16, watching this film thinking, fucking hell, I love you. Like
Yeah, I
she
love
is
it. Like the only
great.
egregious thing she does in this film, and I mentioned at the start there were a few concerns over maybe this being a bit too 90s. And, I mentioned the cuts and edits at the start of the film, which luckily kind of disappear off into the distance as you move through the film. There are some issues. Again, it's very front loaded, the technology stuff, because he seems quite tech savvy. You get a lot of all the internet email chat, the phones with the
Yeah.
head, all that jazz. But everything about Joan Cusack is aggressively 90s. Her earrings are
Yeah.
fucking outrageous. They look like, chandeliers from a mall. And Minnie Driver, as much as I love her, her lime green shirt that she wears to the
Yeah.
prom at the end is
With the
perhaps
blazer.
yeah, it's perhaps the most 90s thing of all time. There's something about that lime green shirt where I'm just like, if I was going to dress somebody and say I want them to look quintessentially 90s, I think I would give them that top. But other than that, she's got that curly hair, which is kind of timeless. She always looks like that. But yeah, she's so charming. John Cusack, I love his look. He kind of plays up to it and he says, look how I'm dressing. I'm into the solitary lifestyle. This is my vibe.
Yeah.
It's a timeless look. So he does. It would. I just don't think this film would work necessarily as well in 2024 if he was coming out looking like what's his name from Died with a Vengeance? Fuck.
Guy Courtney.
No, Died with a Vengeance. The bad
Simon.
guy. Simon. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Simon.
Yeah, the actor's name. He's
Oh,
Scar
fucking hell.
from Lion King.
Yeah.
Why is
Oh
it
my
dropped
God,
out of my
I've
head?
lost it. It's dropped out of mine now.
Oh, well,
All I can
you'll
think
find
of
it when I'm
is
talking.
Simon. Yeah.
But as great as that movie was, you saw him on screen, and some of the edge was taken off by the simple fact that he looked
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons, thank you. Sorry, it just dropped out of both of our brains. This happened. It tends to happen. If it drops out of one of our brains, it drops out of both of our brains. But Jeremy Irons in Die with a Vengeance, as good as he is in that, it's slightly hard to take him seriously because he's got this like 97 look down pat. Yeah. And if John Cusack was cutting about with the same dodgy sunglasses and haircut, you're like, I'm not sure about this. But because you're just like, dude, he could walk into your house now and you'd still look cool. It means the movie has aged wonderfully. And of course, it helps that Grosse Pointe itself is one of those timeless towns as well. So aesthetically, the film looks fantastic for the most part.
You said it came out of the blue as well about Debbie's dad being hit.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched this film many times, as I've already said, and you don't pick up on things, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I never picked up on why I know he was a whistleblower, but why they wanted him dead. Mm-hmm. I think I picked up on it this time. Did you?
No, please. There are two things I really wanted to explain. That's one of them, and there's something like that. But if you can explain that, we're off to a good start.
So he says when Martin drags him into the house, he says, I've told them about the leaky sunroof. So I think a car manufacturer has put a hit out on him because obviously it's Detroit.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because their sunroof leaked. So something's happened that's caused the accident.
That's a big jump, isn't it?
It is, but why would they mention a leaky sunroof?
Yeah, I see what you mean. By that point, I was just surprised it was him. I'd kind of forgotten about that strand. And obviously, they put the emphasis immediately back on John Cusack and Minnie Driver. The whole shootout in the house, and him portraying his love and his weaknesses and his whole crisis of identity and stuff like that. It's amazing, but again, it pushes that narrative into the background. And that's linked into what I think is the biggest issue in the film. I don't know why Hank Azaria and K. Todd Freeman, the NSA agents, are even in this film. I just don't know. Like, you could so easily just get rid of them and either have, I was going to say more Dan Aykroyd, but I like the fact that Dan Aykroyd comes into this film a handful of times like a fucking tornado and then disappears again. So I'd almost be like, we could have maybe a bit more Jeremy Piven, because Jeremy Piven and John Cusack have that effortless chemistry in which you actually believe that they've been friends for the last 10 years. Like that whole thing where you haven't seen your mate for 10 years, they suddenly pop back into your life and you just hit the ground running. You're immediately talking shit. He immediately, like when he sees the dead body, there are no questions. He's fucking ride or die for his mate.
So would you help your friend who disappeared 10 years ago? Would you help him burn a body?
Well, that's what you want to believe, isn't it? It's like if it was
Yeah,
your best mate growing up and you suddenly show up and Benny the Jet is fucking dead on the floor and you're just like, there's no time to ask any questions and your friend's looking at you like, I need help. You want to believe that you're that fucking guy where you're like, all right, dude, let's fucking get this done. You like,
yeah,
I genuinely, like, in my head, I'm like, I think I'm that guy. I think I would help my friend do it. But as to whether that would happen, who knows? But the important thing is in this, you totally believe that Jeremy Piven would do that for John Cusack.
oh
Like
yeah.
immediately, there's that power dynamic where they're best friends, but John Cusack was the cool one. Like, and Jeremy Piven was like hanging. He was like almost like, oh, I can't believe I'm hanging out with this
I mean,
dude.
you got
Like,
that
there was
from the
definitely that vibe.
high Jenny Slater conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever? You said there was two that you wanted to mention. Was the other one by any chance why Benny the Jet's employers wanted Cusack dead? Because that's a
I
big one
did.
for me.
That was strange as well. Yeah. Well, was it because he messed up the previous hit?
So apparently they hinted, but again, through narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've sent Benny the Jet to kill him because Bujo, the prize dog, died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But Bujo, the prize dog, died because the guys that Cusack was sent to kill
Mm-hmm.
took this dog on a fishing trip, chucked the dynamite in the river, and because he's a dog that fetches, he fetched the dynamite back, blew himself up, blew himself the dog up, along with Martin's contracts.
Yeah, but
So
I get the
I'm
impression it
guessing
was Martin through
no.
the
They were
sequel.
fishing with dynamite. They were
Okay,
fishing
well,
with
yeah, but
dynamite.
I feel like he was that was something I
Yeah,
missed because
so
when they're
that's what
having
I'm
the
saying. So
conversation with Dan
I
Aykroyd,
think
like it's definitely the implication that John Cusack, because John Cusack, like Martin, sorry, gets very defensive when he talks about killing the dog.
yeah,
He's like,
I'd
"Oh, I'm
never
not
get
that kind of a
no.
guy," but
But
how
that's what
the
I'm
fuck
saying.
was
So
I supposed to know that he was going
I
to play
think
fetch?
what they're saying is they think he blew the boat up with the dog on board.
Okay, yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
they because they were his hits. They think he blew the boat up with the dog on board.
got you.
But Cusack is saying, no. What happened was they kidnapped the dog and the dog went
Mm-hmm,
and fetched dynamite. I didn't
mm-hmm.
blow it up. I didn't have a chance. So basically, again, Martin's crap at his job. Instead of just killing them, he was looking at them and then they killed themselves. So yeah,
It's
so they
weird
think,
because you see all this kind of third-hand stuff where he's both bad at his job, but I think it's more like he's just like he feels like he's the bad luck guy. Like everything he does, like you think about the opening hit, he actually does his bit correct. He nails the guy like with the shot. It all goes off perfectly, but then Dan Aykroyd shows up and fucks everything up. And later on, when like Benny the Jet shows up, which is one of the all-time great fights, by the way. Like you can
yeah,
see
it's
that
good.
they've trained to get like, the reason Benny Jet was in this movie is
It's
because he
because he
trained
trained.
John
Yeah,
Cusack for like the last 10 years. And you can feel that they've got that comfort there. But it feels like a martial arts fight, but it feels like one in the real world. It feels scrappy. It doesn't go on for too long. The way he kills him is like super unceremonious. And Benny the Jet, he's like odd job in this movie. He doesn't say shit, but it's the Darth Vader syndrome. You don't need anyone to explain to you that he's a bad guy and that he's a badass, despite the fact that he's like 5'5". He's got this weird ass haircut. But as soon as we all know Benny the Jet from like martial arts films, but most people wouldn't have known him. But you needed no explanation. You just see him and like, that's the bad guy, and he is a badass. And I think he actually gets one of the great opening lines. I don't think he says anything before he goes to the prom,
it's
picks up
his
a card, and he
eye.
says, "It is I," said Sidney Feldman. Like that's a fucking awesome opening line. And 2 minutes later, for all the build-up, he has one shootout sequence. You don't see him again. And then next thing you know, he's dead. But it works. Like I said, I love the stuff mostly with Dan Aykroyd. I'm not sure if the union stuff was really necessary. They really kind of leaned into that a lot. I
Yeah,
didn't
I
get
think
it.
it's because they needed something to get Dan Aykroyd there. To be fair, that was all that was. It was just
Mhm.
to get. It was a narrative. It was a plot threat just to get him to the same place.
Yeah,
The
maybe,
same
maybe.
with Hank Azaria and K. Todd Freeman, as you said, because apparently they're NSA agents or whoever they are meant to be, but they're happy to let the whistleblower die. So
Mhm.
from what I can gather, it seems like Dan Aykroyd is a snitch.
Yeah.
He's
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%.
he's like the guy from Rock and Roller. In order to save his own ass, he'll give you other people up.
Yeah.
So I think
I
that's
can
yeah.
I can see what they're going for. This idea that you go back to this old town and you're reliving this moment from the 80s and getting this like magical do-over without like, usually when you have these movies, there's like a time machine involved, something like that. Immediately, I think of another John Cusack classic, Hot Tub Time Machine. Legitimately one of my favorite comedies of all time. Like, I think it is that good. This is just like this magical moment where, like I said, it's like you get to literally take the girl back to prom, the one you fucked up and all that jazz. And that kind of plays against this idea that while that's going on, there's like 6 different interested parties involved. Now, if you put more time into that, I think it could have worked. But because they rightly, in my opinion, put the emphasis on his relationship with Minnie Driver and on John Cusack himself, it means a lot of that feels half-baked. And then you just, all of a sudden, you're just like, there's too many characters with not enough to do. Like when you have the show at the end and Hank Azaria and K. Todd Freeman suddenly get shot by John Cusack and Dan Aykroyd, it feels like a needless moment in the film. You're just like, why did they show up? Why did they get killed immediately? Why were they even in this film? Again, I suspect that there's a cut of this movie where they make a lot more sense. But in the final cut, I'm just like, as much as I like them in and of themselves, I would just be like, I just get rid of them. That'd be my major issue with a film I otherwise really enjoyed.
Take a guess at the body count.
1, 2, 3, 4. It's not that high, is it? Like 6? Is it? Oh no! Wait! Sorry, I'm just not thinking about the beret guy at the end. A lot of people get killed there. I'm going to go 22.
Oh, 14.
Oh, 14. I've overcooked
it's
it.
more like, as the film goes, it's more than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, you said at the end, then it was like they said, "Oh yeah, you're cannon fodder 1, you're cannon fodder 2, you're cannon." Just go ahead.
Although all I really remember about that shoot at the end is Dan Aykroyd running towards the door with both guns pointed out, just looking awkward as fuck. It's just absolutely fantastic.
The awkwardness again is when they're both fighting in the kitchen, and he chucks the gun, and I don't know what he says, but he's got this like it's like a fucking Looney Tunes esque as he crawls up to the thing. He goes and he just hands his thing, and then he gets killed by a TV.
He says popcorn.
It's popcorn, is it?
I was like, another thing I've got as a note here, ask Rob about popcorn. Like, did that make any sense to you? You didn't even hear what it was, so you have no idea, obviously. But yeah, he kind of like suddenly goes all Looney Tunes and suddenly just says the term popcorn. And I was like, I don't get it at all. And yeah, kill with a TV. But because it's tonally a bit all over the place for the most part, this movie kind of gets away with a wacky kill like that, combined with moments of more traditional violence, I suppose. Because, John Cusack, some of the shootouts are pretty badass towards the end, but they're few and far between. But luckily, when they do show up, they're usually pretty good, despite the microwave thing now being ruined by you, of course.
What's up with the getting killed by a TV thing as well in that era? 96 Scream, 97 Grosse Pointe Blank, and I'm pretty sure there was a couple of others of TV kills.
I immediately thought of Scream. I think that's still the ultimate kill by TV moment in movie history, unless there's a great one. I mean, that one really does stand out. But
I mean, you only have a good TV one is Dream Warriors, isn't it? Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors.
Yeah, that's a different beast, that is, though, isn't it? When she gets picked up and like pulled into the TV, and we've got to do Dream Warriors, dude.
And Lawrence Fishburne finds her just hanging by her head through the TV. Yeah.
The thing is, though, that's not even like that movie's got some great kills. The one that always stood out for me, because I'm not very squirmish. Like when I was younger, similar to yourself, you watch movies like RoboCop and Aliens. It's like you find out pretty
the vein puppet dance.
100%. I was like, that is fucking gross. But you mentioned a few things in this film which kind of caught you like, oh, what, that doesn't make any sense. As a video game guy, the one thing at the convenience store, they've got a Doom 2 arcade machine, which gets a lot of play because obviously in what I can only assume was homage directly in The Amazing Spider-Man. I'm not sure if you remember the scene where Stan Lee is in the library, and he's got earphones on, and Spider-Man is fighting Lizard. Is it Lizard? Is that his name?
Yeah,
Lizard. And he can't hear anything, and it's all like kicking off behind him. It's basically that sequence, only the kid is playing Doom 2. So you see a lot of the shots going, oh, look, it's Doom 2. But it's an arcade machine. I was like, I'm pretty sure Doom or Doom 2 never had an arcade machine. So I checked, it is correct. The only Doom 2 arcade machines that ever exist was made for this movie. And if there are any others, they're replicas made by other people because of this film. So that briefly took me out of it. But that whole sequence, other than the aforementioned Fucking, you really have upset me now that you've explained the whole microwave thing.
It is upsetting, isn't it? It's egregious. It's just,
Yeah, usually I feel like, you bring these wild things up and you get very upset about them, and I don't really give a fuck. But for some reason, the bomb in the microwave has got to me. I'm not going to say it's ruined the movie for me, but
no.
oh no, I don't know. But
There's no way it would count down to zero. It would have already exploded. They'd be dead. They'd be fucked.
They would be. But one of the things, the thing is, we don't talk because he's usually a supporting character. And when I think of like Jeremy Piven, he was in like Rushmore and stuff like that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But he's just one of those guys who's definitely got Pharrell syndrome. Like, I feel like Jeremy Piven has looked exactly the same for like 30 years.
Yeah.
He's just one of those dudes. Sorry, it was just in my head while we were talking about it. But I realize, that's going to go nowhere. I've just taken you down a narrative dead end, but I just wanted to bring that up.
What was the he did one of those like slacker teen comedies, didn't he? Back in the day with yeah, but he was the main character in one of them. It was with John Favreau. What the fuck?
Not
was
Dazed and Confused. Not
no. He was actually the main character. I'm just going down the list now.
John Favreau.
Too far, yeah. It was before Judgment Night. I'm pretty sure.
He's going to find it. You got to find it now. I'm committed to it.
I have. You carry on. See if I can find it. I don't think it was in the 80s though. So
sounds like a 90s. It would be 90s.
So what was interesting, though, while I'm looking for this, was Jeremy Piven was also in Say Anything, I know, but they were high school friends, Jeremy Piven and John Cusack. So
you can feel it, and yeah. And as I said, he's part of that production company which bought the rights to this movie, or certainly to the script anyway. So yeah, that buddiness, it's hard to replicate sometimes on screen. If people don't have that natural rapport, and sometimes you can just put people in a room and it just happens. But the fact that they've known each other for years and they were friends, you can absolutely feel it on screen. Because I think sometimes you can almost fake like romantic chemistry, but that kind of friendship, that kind of back and forth is much, much trickier. Have you found it yet?
No, it's not on his IMDb randomly.
Oh, well, then we have to move on, I suppose. But
Jeremy Piven. PCU.
PCU. Oh, there we go. Got there eventually.
PCU with Jeremy Piven, David Spade, John Favreau. David Spade played the preppy guy of the good fraternity. Jeremy Piven was the the slacker of the.
Oh, okay. I've never even heard of it.
No, it came out of nowhere randomly for me a couple of years ago. It wasn't one of them, but apparently it was a big thing.
Oh, fair enough. No, but yeah. So I mean, like I said, like you go long stretches in this film without it being an action film, and like I said, it's so successful that you actually forget. But towards the end of this film, it does kick into gear, and it still manages to magically retain its tone. Because like I said, you have like the speech with that fantastic speech at the end of the movie where he's explaining his I call it his contract killer speech to Debbie, when he's like all wide-eyed and innocent again, that Cusackiness which only he can pull off. But even the shootout in the house at the end, where you're getting this great action sequence, but he's explaining his life and his decisions and how much he loves her while he's shooting all these guys. Like you said, I wasn't really sure how many guys run into that house, but they all get dealt with. They're just no name, kind of like, are they part of Dan Aykroyd's union at this point? Like, does it even matter? Who gives a shit? But for like the last 30 minutes, this film does kick into gear, and it all starts with that amazing fight, which again comes out of nowhere. Benny the Jet has shown up at the prom. It's going to kick off at some point. But because the movie is so calm and so chill, when he suddenly turns around the corner, there's no like build up or anything. Just turns around the corner like, fuck, the fight is on immediately. And then suddenly you get to shoot and the action towards the end.
Why is the furnace on?
Who fucking knows? That feels like an American thing. Like, again, another John Hughes thing. When I think of furnaces, I think of like Home Alone. Why does that house have that giant furnace? And it comes back to, again, the fact that McAllister Sr. is clearly a crime boss.
Yeah.
That's the only reason.
Take him down to my basement. Take him down to my basement and do a Grosse Pointe blank.
Exactly. How many bodies have been burned to a crisp in that goddamn basement? There's no other reason for it to be there. He's absolutely a crime boss. These films are all in trends. Like, if you told me Home Alone, Grosse Pointe Blank, and John Wick all exist in the same universe and they're all connected by a handful of characters, I would absolutely fucking believe you.
I mean, again, like, I'm not a bomb expert. I've never burned a body.
Thanks for clearing that up, the whole bomb expert thing again, yeah. Just in case.
But I've never burnt a body. Wouldn't it smell? But is it so hot that it just, I don't
think the smell would necessarily be the issue. I think it would be more, it wouldn't burn the bones. you'd still have to get rid of the bones.
You have to burn it like a very high heat, and I don't think the furnace
I
is
don't.
burning at the
Yeah,
heat it
a
needs. Yeah.
furnace in the bottom of a school isn't going to have the temperature to get rid of the bones. So, Ben, the only thing is, I guess for them, the only thing that's important is that nobody's going to be looking for Benny the Jet. You know, he's one of those guys, and even if they found him, there's nothing that's going to really link him to anyone. I assume. You know, he's going to be off the book, so to speak. So he can probably get away. And again, coming back to the whole John Wick thing, you can get away with killing these contract killers in broad daylight, because if someone finds them, there's not going to be any records of them. It's not like if John Wick suddenly dies in a mall in one of those shootouts and somebody finds the body, they're going to be like, oh, well, John Wick and his like family and all that. It's not going to exist. They would have taken.
Yeah, but that's because in the
steps,
John Wick universe, there's two normal people and the rest of them are related to hitmen somehow.
Yeah, I feel like John Wick kind of gets away with that. Like the idea that by the fourth film, you're like, I'm pretty sure 99% of planet Earth is somehow a fucking
they're
hitman.
somehow involved. Like they've got these gold coins, everybody. There's like two normal people living in like Wyoming who don't know what's going on. The rest of them, and I don't know why I pick Wyoming, it's just fun to say.
Why not? It is fun to say. But anything else you want to bring up before we move on?
Oh, sorry, I was just taking a quick drink. I will check my notes, but I think I've pretty much captured it all.
I think we've done the movie justice there.
I'm in the microwave, specials, therapist chair. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
All right, so favorite scene, I mean, it's probably the school fight, isn't it? Or the aforementioned, despite the microwave thing, the shootout at the convenience store leading into the call between Martin and Debbie, which I think perfectly captures the spirit of the movie. Where you have that big action sequence, and then he's just calmly calling Debbie, and suddenly he's having this like moment of kind of introspection just after he's almost been killed by Benny the Jet. And also that sequence has one of, and this movie, as we already mentioned, has some of the greatest songs of all time, just interspersed throughout the entire movie. But I think the finest needle drop is arguably Guns N' Roses' Live and Let Die. When they play the music, obviously for us, and then when he walks into the convenience store,
it's on the radio
playing the music. I'm like, that is pretty fun. But actually, the 99 Luftballons needle drop at the end, where he just killed Benny the Jet and he does his classic line, "It's not me," and then 99 Luftballons kind of plays as she runs off. I was like, fuck, man. Not only is the music amazing, they seem to pick it perfectly for every single moment. But
it was the same.
For all my talk, it's still the school fight.
It was the same at the beginning, where you had the violent femmes blister in the sun, and then he turns the radio station over and it plays another song.
Yeah.
It
was almost like an excuse, like, because again, she works in a radio station, she's a DJ. It's like, how many awesome songs can we get? I almost feel like they've kind of like reverse engineered it. Like, I want to put, like, they're looking through songs they want to put in this film, and he ends up with a list of like 42, which might be actually accurate, as insane as that sounds. And he's like, how the fuck are we going to get 42 of these songs into this movie? Oh, we'll make her a DJ. That's how we're going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So for me, my favorite scene is the standoff between Martin and Bob de Stefano, played by Michael Kulbitz. Where they're in the locker room and like Bob is like, right, let's do this. And Martin's like, and it's just this, because Martin knows he could kill the dude in seconds, but he's just like, do you really think there's any animosity between us? Do you really think? And then Bob's like, and he pulls out a poem and he goes, "These are my words." Yeah. And what I found out, it was ad-libbed. Bob was actually meant to drunkenly recite the whole poem. And John Cusack just went, skip to the end. Just tell me the end.
Again, like, that leans into the whole idea that beyond this being a hitman movie, that really this is a do-over movie. And that idea, like, you can see that even though John Cusack's saying, do you think there is us? But it's clearly implied that there was a them. That in high school, he used to be an asshole towards John Cusack.
But it's funny, isn't it? Because
going back with that confidence and just saying, listen, that was high school. That was 10 years ago. There is no us anymore. I've moved on. You should move on. And it's just one of those cool moments where, again, I think anybody going back to the school reunion is just like, and of course, Minnie Driver's watching him. It's this dream scenario where you're just like, you would like to think you would act that way if you went back to a school reunion.
It's funny, though, because you can clearly see Martin's held onto a lot from his childhood.
Yeah.
Ditching Debbie, holding his parents, holding on to all these things. The way he visits his father's grave, who apparently died 3 years after he left. So he's holding on to all this. But the one thing he hasn't held on to, which rightly so, is his school bully. But for some reason, his school bully has held on to that, and it's beautiful to see the way
Mhm.
it just
Yeah, well,
traverses anything.
it's really interesting, that whole idea that if you suddenly left, and as dramatically as he did at his prom, that all that stuff would hold a much stronger place in I guess your history or in your mind, because
Yeah,
there's no closure to anything. You just left. So it's like, your world, in terms of living like a normal human being, it ended when he was like 18 at the prom. Because as he said, like 3 hours later, he was literally a soldier. He went straight to becoming a soldier. Then he becomes a hitman, and his life just becomes weird. So his life as a relatable human being ended at that moment. So it's this kind of like sliding doors moment for him, and that's
yeah.
what so much of this movie is really about. It really is a sliding doors movie.
I totally agree. I 100% agree. If you look into the deeper side of this film, there's a lot more to see, I believe.
Yeah, but it's got such a deft touch. The fact that it still works as a Hitman movie, that it
Yeah,
does work as a region movie, that it works as an existential crisis movie. A lot of that, again, comes down to Cusack. And we've not even mentioned the director. And it's one that I think most people wouldn't have heard of, like George Armitage. Like, he deserves a lot of credit for this film. The fact that they shot ostensibly 3 different versions of this movie to find the right tone. Because this movie could have been a disaster. And as I said, with their approach, it did mean that the hitman, should we say, side of the movie did take a bit of a hit in terms of quality and certainly in terms of common sense. But the fact that they've managed to pull it together, and it's still only an hour and 45, it zips along wonderfully. Like, for all my
yeah,
complaints, I don't want this, just to be clear, I don't want this to be a 2 hour and 10 minute movie, which is exactly what it would be nowadays, where you'd pad all this stuff out. Like, a lot of it is left to your imagination. And I think it's one of the reasons that makes it such a great rewatchable, that I watched it as a kid, or late teens, early 20s, really enjoyed it. And now you watch it at 42, and it almost feels like a different movie, but in a
yeah.
really, really good way. And I don't know anything. Last week when you were teasing the film and you said the director George Armitage, I was like, who the fuck is George Armitage? It rings
And
a
but that's
bell.
it. You'd be forgiven not knowing who he is, considering
100%.
the time frame of his films. He's only done 7. Sorry, were you about to say
Mm-hmm.
the list of films? Sorry.
No, I was going to say the
Yeah,
only one which ever stuck out to me was Miami Blues with Alec
yeah.
Baldwin. The other films, I've looked at them, I don't even know what they are.
So the year of his film, like he's done 7 films, like I said, directed between so 71, 72, 76, 79. Then a big drop off, and he came back in 1990 for, as you said, Miami Blues.
Mm-hmm.
Then a 7-year disappearance again until Grosse Point Blank, which you think, for watching this now, you think he'd have an array of offers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then he comes back in 2004. What's that? 17 years later. No, it's fucking 7 years later. Well, fucking my maths is shit. To do the big bounce with Morgan
Mm-hmm.
Freeman and Owen Wilson, which I've seen once, probably never watch again. Didn't really like. I don't
It's
really remember
just
much
bang
about it.
average, totally
Yeah,
forgettable film.
and it's really like you see what he's done with this, and you think, why didn't you direct more? Why didn't you do more like this? What you hit the nail on the head. Or it's definitely not like a sequel or a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual sequel or anything like that. But High Fidelity feels like a film that this guy could have done.
Absolutely. When you see this film, well, if you're John Cusack, I'm surprised, and it's always hard because I know they said they got involved with the rewrites and stuff like that. That maybe he wouldn't like have watched this film and thought, man, I want to work with this guy again. Like, he gets me, he
Yeah.
puts me up on screen. It's like the best version of Cusack. But yeah, for one reason or another, this is kind of it. Like you said, only 7 movies, most of them in the 70s. And as much as I love this film growing up, I suddenly realized I had no idea who directed this, and for good reason. Like, I don't feel bad about it, because I think most people, like, he's just not on anyone's radar, which is a bit of a shame. But the idea that you could just kind of roll in, just do one amazing movie, that's fine. That's fine, because this film has totally lived on, or at least it has for people of our age. I'm not sure if it has for a younger generation. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
people are revisiting this, but this feels like it'd be a great like Netflix movie. I'm not sure if it's shown up on Netflix, but I feel like this could totally find a second wind, especially with like all the 90s nostalgia now. It's got that like 90s wit, it's the cynicism of the time, and it just works, and it both feels like a 90s movie, but timeless at the same time,
Yeah.
if you see what I mean.
For us in the UK, it has no streaming home. You've got to rent it or
Yeah,
buy
yeah,
it.
I've got on
Yeah.
DVD, so
So
yeah.
it has no streaming home like Netflix or Amazon
Yeah,
Prime or
yeah, yeah,
anywhere
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah. But luckily, like same as you, I already own it. So
Yeah, well, strange. Anyway, loves and hates. So for me, unsurprisingly, number one, John Cusack already mentioned that effortless, cool thing, filled with nervous energy, confident and uncomfortable, blah blah blah. Two, Dan Aykroyd being a bad guy. Don't see it enough on screen. He's absolutely fantastic. Bit of a
Yeah.
cartoon character. Maybe shouldn't work. Still not sure about the popcorn line, but absolutely does. And even though they're not on screen all that often, I immediately go back to that diner sequence. It's electric. It's dynamite. And you just think, man, we could have maybe done with a bit more of this. Again, get rid of Hank Azaria. Number three, the famous fight sequence is fantastic. I'm going to stick in for the last 40 minutes. As I said, it becomes a proper action film at that point, but still retains that Grosse Pointe blankiness. I wonder sometimes if actually this film maybe suffered from the title. Like, it makes sense kind of when you stop and think about it, and it's memorable in its own way, but it's not clear, is it? It's not like...
No, I mean, for a lot, maybe people in America, definitely for people outside of America, Grosse Pointe doesn't mean anything.
That means
for
shit,
us. Yeah, exactly. And then, and then Blank, obviously, so Grosse Pointe, where he grew up, Blank is his name. It just,
I didn't even watch... Again, like the soundtrack and stuff, and I'm going to sneak that in. Number five, the soundtrack. Sorry, I've got to put in the soundtrack. I don't think it kind of caught on with me that the town was called Grosse Pointe. So, like, before we started recording this, I was like, why is it called Grosse Pointe Blank again? I haven't seen this film for donkey's years, and it seems quite silly now. But yeah, I'm not sure if the title would have helped its box office, put it that way. But those are my five loves, which should have been three. My apologies.
Yeah, so mine are basically yours boiled down to actually three. So
they're like yours, but less cunty, So we're gonna go with this.
John Cusack and Minnie Driver together.
Yeah,
absolutely great. Yeah, Dan Aykroyd. You said Dan Aykroyd's great in this. When he's in the bathroom after dinner, and Hank Azaria and K. Todd Freeman are, and then he comes out the bathroom going, "That's him. That's him. Yeah, we know that's him. That's him. Oh, look, he's coming back." He hides in the bathroom. Just, "Oh, fuck you guys," and he comes back out. It should not be a professional hitman. I don't know what it is about him, but he's great in this. And the soundtrack. Your number five is my number three. I fucking love the soundtrack in this.
Yeah, I'm going to be... it's probably saved me from Kenny Loggins, which I've been listening to all week after recording Over the Top. So it's probably about time that I moved on to something a little less ironic, should we say.
I'm a little bit upset with Apple Play, which is what I use, because they don't have the actual soundtrack. So I've got to go and...
here, like on Spotify, people have created playlists. And all of a sudden, I'm like, and the thing is, you go down the rabbit hole because like the Pixies are on this. And I'm like, man, I haven't listened to the Pixies for ages. So all of a sudden, I'm listening to loads of Pixies tracks, which, I will thank the movie for. In terms of hates, this is a strange one because, like, I mentioned the 90s cuts and edits age this film, but they seem to be front loaded. So, it is an issue. And it's something to get over at the start of the film where I had my concerns like, oh, this might be the movie I feared it was going to be. It passes very quickly and became the movie I hoped it was going to be. Joan Cusack's earrings and suits, fuck me. I know there's a reference to Sgt. Pepper, but it still feels like a 90s nod to a 60s album combined with the earrings. She looks like she could have been on the set of the Flintstones. There's something about the whole look of it, which I as much as I love her, and I love the fact that you went with one of her quotes for the opening, because she's fantastic.
I love that quote.
Another person, like, she's obviously, you could talk about nepotism, but it's fine if she's as good as she is. She's airlifted in, she does a couple of scenes, she never leaves the office, but she knocks out the park. Minnie Driver's lime green shirt, absolutely shocking. And I am going to sneak in a fourth again. The whole NSA thing with Hank Azaria and K. Todd Freeman doesn't go anywhere. And then they just get shot unceremoniously. And I was like, well, what the fuck was the point of that? But those are my hates.
So I've already mentioned my three while talking for the film, but I'm going to say them in the list now. So no particular order. These are my three, right? The Chair, The Office, The Bomb.
Boom. Nailed it.
Yeah. Absolutely, and actually, what you did there with Boom, Like the Chair pissed me off. The Office layout, I might be getting that wrong, but that I couldn't understand it, and the bomb.
Well, all right, I'm going to give you 2 out of 3. The Office layout didn't bother me. Now that you've explained it, it's weird for sure. It's not going to make my list of hates. If I was rewriting now after we've chatted my list of hates, the Chair. For sure. It's almost egregious. I almost hate the fact that I didn't have it on my list. The Chair for sure, and retrospectively, yes, the bomb in the microwave doesn't work at all, but that might just mean I hate you for bringing it up rather than it being in the movie. So I'm going to add a 5th hate, Rob. There we go.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Alternative titles to this film, which, as we mentioned, might not be the worst thing in the world if they're out there.
I don't know. I'm looking at a couple of these titles, and they might be the worst thing in the world.
Oh, fair enough.
Right, Argentina. target shooting.
Terrible.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to say, right, we're going to do better or worse on everyone. Are any of these better than the actual title, Grosse Point Blank?
Australia randomly just decided to have an alternative. Like they don't usually come up on this list.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, it's because English language speaking just doesn't make
yeah,
any sense. Yeah.
no.
But it does. This is one of those ones because we don't know. I think there was like a Ben Stiller movie called like Duplex or something, and it had a different name over here because we don't know what the fuck a duplex is. And
Yeah.
you had like Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was changed to Harry Potter
Sorcerer's
because they don't know what the fuck a philosopher is.
Okay.
Blah, blah, blah. So you do get those occasionally. But
I totally get that, but in no way, shape, or form does this title, right, reference or like change Grosse Point in any way.
Yeah.
And it's the porno version. Big Tip Blank.
No, that's fucking terrible. That is terrible. I thought it was going to be like, because we said about like Grosse Point, and maybe I just thought this because I've gone on this journey in my head. Instead of calling like Grosse Point Blank, you could have called it like Michigan Blank or something like that. Because we know what Michigan is, but not Grosse Point. But no, that Australia, what the fuck were you thinking? Terrible. Worse.
Belgium, hitmen and prom dresses.
Worse.
But they didn't go to the prom for a start.
Yeah. No, it doesn't work. If there was a big showdown at the end and no, it doesn't work.
I'm all right with Brazil. Killer in conflict.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's
not a movie title though, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it kind of sums up. It's better than the other ones, but no.
Bulgaria, murderer at gunpoint.
No, it's too generic again.
French,
all this is doing is serving to like warm me to the idea of Grosse Point Blank. Suddenly I'm like, this might be the best title of all time because these are so dog shit.
French Canada, they got two.
French Canada, classic.
The Killer of Grosse Point, which is all right.
That's not bad, yeah.
Yeah. And then Hitman.
That might actually be better.
Well, because the Killer of Grosse Point. So then as you look at that title, you realize Grosse Point is a place.
Yeah. It makes more sense to those. I think that's the best. Well, it's come to be the best one. I think that might be better than the actual title.
Like I said, though, they had two. So the other one was Hitmen and Bullet Robes.
No, bad.
What the fuck is a bullet robe?
God knows.
Croatia, Mercenary.
Nope.
Denmark, The Assassin's Meeting.
No.
Estonia, Assassin Blank.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's okay, actually.
Finland, Grosse Point Blank / a hitman from a small town.
Yeah, they've panicked. It doesn't make any sense. And they've laid down, but do you retain the original? That's just two fucking titles. You can't have both.
Yeah. Germany. Grosse Point Blank. First the murder, then the pleasure.
No, Germany. Das ist not good.
Greece, Contract of Death.
Nope.
Hungary, Home, Bloody Home.
No. That sounds like a horror movie.
Italy, The Last Contract.
Yeah, sounds a little bit too, kind of Murtaugh and Lethal Weapon style, but sure.
Yeah. Mexico, Target Shooting.
Nope.
Norway, Assassin at Class Party.
A bit on the nose, but it's okay.
Poland, I think, just watched the diner scene way too much. Killing for Breakfast.
No, that doesn't work at all.
Spain, Somewhat Special Killer.
I mean, I kind of like it. Like you said, it's not a title, but I kind of like it.
And finally, Vietnam, Revenge Killer.
No, terrible. So there were two on there, which I think are actually better than Grosse Point Blank. I'll give them that, but the rest are absolute dog shit. Any facts of this one?
Yeah, we got a couple. So in one version of the scene where Martin walks into Debbie's radio booth for the first time, Minnie Driver decided to let her character put all the cards on the table and just kiss him. George Armitage said it was just wonderful, completely out of the blue. You should have seen the smile on Johnny's face afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a great sequence. You can see why they kept it in.
Yeah.
And I think it within character, because she is, they're both odd. They're both quirky in their own way, which I think, again, makes the relationship kind of work.
So one of John Cusack's favorite films of his own. And you briefly touched upon this one, but I'll go into a bit more detail with it. So according to George Armitage, he basically shot 3 movies simultaneously. Mm-hmm. One that stuck to the script, one that was mildly understated, and one that went completely over the top in terms of improvisation and energy. It was usually the third version that got used. This means there could be alternate takes of nearly every scene still out there somewhere, depending on whether the studio retained the footage and what happened to it in the intervening years. So
Well, I'm
that'd be
glad they went
interesting.
with
Yeah.
the bigger performances, because this does have a improvisational bent to it, especially the stuff I found at the prom. That almost felt like completely unscripted when they were going up to the different people, meeting guys they hadn't seen since like high school. It didn't feel scripted at all. It felt very natural. I thought it worked perfectly.
Yeah. George Armitage originally planned to shoot the high school scenes at Grosse Pointe South High, but was unable to get permission from the school board. They felt it would be inappropriate, to show someone graduating from Grosse Pointe school system to become a hitman.
Yeah, well, isn't that one of the weird things with this film, actually? Like, for all, like, I think they wanted to shoot in Grosse Pointe in Michigan, but there's like a couple of overhead shots, but this is filmed almost exclusively in LA. So it's actually, in terms of what you're looking at, it's an LA movie, despite the fact that they're trying to sell it as a Michigan movie.
When Debbie tells Martin in her bedroom that he's a psycho, she can be seen moving her hand as though talking. In an interview, John Cusack said that this was an ad lib, as Minnie Driver had seen John and Joan Cusack doing something similar with each other on the set off camera.
That's cool.
What's also interesting is Minnie Driver was there for the scenes between Joan and John, because obviously they weren't set in Grosse Pointe.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was all in LA anyway, so.
Debbie says her apartment burned down on Devil's Night. This refers to the night before Halloween, where traditionally, particularly in Detroit, there's this significant spike in vandalism and arson fires. So they just they just briefly touched on that. Yeah, my fucking house is burnt down in an arson attack in the city.
Yeah, we don't have that, and I'm not sure if it's the same in like America. But I mean, when we were younger, it was about kind of low key vandalism. Halloween, like it wasn't really about trick or treating when you're older. It was
egging.
It was just egging. It was egging. Like I know they do the whole toilet paper thing, but getting your house egged sucks ass. As anyone who knows, if they've dropped them in the kitchen, cleaning up eggs is fucking the worst. They might as well just dose your house in like milk. It's just one of those things, horrible to clean up, stinks. And yeah, everyone thinks, oh, it's fun, but like it hitting the window sounds like a brick. And then it's sometimes like, God, it would have been easier if it was a fucking brick, because they've thrown 4 eggs in my goddamn window. So yeah, not exactly Detroit levels of vandalism, but eggs rather than fire. So that's our approach.
The camera that Martin uses at the reunion is a Minox, a miniature camera popular with Cold War spies. And why is nobody questioning that he's pulled out a spy camera?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Why are you taking my picture with a spy camera?
It's just bizarre. There's weird technology in this film all over the place.
Randomly, we didn't point it out again. Feature film debut of Jenna Elfman. Just the one that showed up in a neck brace and apparently was kidnapped or something, but she was just drunk driving.
Yeah, it was
a
couple of weird characters, but overshadowed by the wedding dress, of course.
So the high school shown in the movie is John Marshall High School in Los Angeles, California. So they now had no problem with people thinking that assassins come from their school.
Oh, anything goes in LA, so it's fun.
Yeah.
Why they would be so fussy in Detroit, I don't know. But again, it is Detroit, but this is Grosse Pointe in Michigan. This is highfalutin by comparison,
Though several production companies liked the concept, it took a while for Tom Jankovic to sell his script. Kiefer Sutherland wanted to make it around 92 and 93. But in the words of one columnist, the mix of comedy and violence proved to be a tough sell.
Yeah, because we said before, it's like if you don't get it right, and there's so many examples of action comedies going wrong. There aren't actually that many genuinely good action comedies, but this is 100% one of them. And it's more than that. As I said, there's a unique vibe to this film, which I'm not sure is captured by any other film, certainly in terms of action films. But yeah, it works, but it's almost a miracle that it does.
Just seeing if there's any more we can really use. No, I think we're good, mate.
Cool. Next is Hug to Future. So it's where we ask the question: remake, sequel, Let It Die, or Leave Well Alone.
It's an easy one for me, mate.
Leave Alone.
If I can go, leave it alone.
Yeah, I kind of tried to stretch it. I was like, well, if you were going to remake it now, who would I have? Was the only one I could think of was like maybe Adam Driver could bring a kind of certain energy.
See what you're
and
saying.
I was like, all of a sudden, then I was like, oh, you could almost have it rather than a brother-sister thing, like a Star Wars reunion, and have Daisy Ridley playing the Joan Cusack role. And I'm saying, like, I could kind of go for that, but I'm really stretching it. Like, that would be the perfect scenario. But the answer is very much leave it alone. Make a change. This is where we say, if we could only make one change to make this film better, it's very easy for me. I get rid of Hank Azaria and K. Todd Freeman. and maybe have a bit more Aykroyd perhaps. But yeah, that's my only major issue with the film.
The bomb. If you're going to make a change, make sure the bomb actually, I don't know, blows up as soon as you turn the microwave on, or have a better device to have it blow up.
Yeah, we could see where this was going. That was in the post, so to speak. Video games. Unsurprisingly, there wasn't a Grosse Point Blank video game. The easy answer is, and I am going to stick with it, is IO Interactive's Hitman, just with more existential dread and a touch more life sim about it. I like the idea of it being a combination between like jobs a la Hitman, where you go to a location, you have to take a guy down, you can do it in a number of hilarious ways. But then in the life sim bit, you can suddenly have these sudden moments of combat. So you have to do your fucking shopping, but then someone like Benny the Jet shows up and you turn it into like a combat encounter.
Yeah.
So that's what I go for, is a combination of like the actual Hitman game, just with a bit more life sim about it.
I had real trouble trying to think of a game to like how I would want to see it. And I'm with you. I Hitman probably.
It's such an obvious answer because it even has a sense of humor about it, kind of thing, and you can totally imagine having those setups because those sequences. You said that one where he's trying to like drug the guy, and then he has to go and says that could just so easily be a level from Hitman, where you can make these missions work in any number of ways. You try and drug him, it doesn't quite work, so you've got to go down all guns blazing. It's basically a level from Hitman. So yeah, as I said, I combine the two worlds. Worlds. I do apologize. In terms of rating and recommendations, I suspect we might be on the same page here. It's very much a 4 and a yes for me, and like a really strong 4 and a very strong yes. As I said, the opening, I was a little concerned this might be a bit too 90s when I was going back and revisiting in 2024. That bleeds away real quick. And what you're left with is a very unique combination of existential dread, do-over magic, comedy, and action, which I don't think exists anywhere else.
Yeah. It was going to be a 3.5, if I'm honest with you, but it has pushed to a 4. I like as I've joked about it many times, the chair, the bomb, all those things don't really take you out of it as much.
Yeah, well, I actually,
to notice. Yeah,
when I started, because you're writing the notes as you go, and quite often, based on my memory of a film, I'll put down an initial rating just as part of my notes, and this started as a 3. And then as I watched it, I was like, no, this is a fucking 4. Like, I liked it as a kid, and I like it more as an adult, and as I said, for different reasons. So yeah, 4 and a yes for me.
In regards to recommendations for me.
Sorry, I do apologize.
That's okay. I would recommend it. It is 100% a yes in regards to recommendations because it has pretty much something for everybody in regards. So it's so much fun. It's so bright and colorful and it's lovely and the fucking breezy soundtrack. It's just great.
I mean, I would just say to people, just go and watch the film so you have an excuse to listen to the soundtrack. Or even if you don't want to rewatch this film, if you listen to this podcast, just go listen to the soundtrack. We've mentioned some of them. The reason we haven't mentioned them all, there are legitimately too many to list. It would become almost absurd. Go and listen to the soundtrack, even if it's just on Spotify and someone else has created a playlist. It's wall-to-wall bangers. Yeah. So yeah, that's been Grosse Point Blank. Next week is my choice. The year, sir, is 1988.
Oh, we haven't done many 88s.
No. The director is Ivan Reitman. It's a pretty big hint.
Yeah, okay. So what did he do after Ghostbusters? Ivan Reitman.
It's a film that I'm amazed we haven't done to this point. We're like 170 plus episodes in, and I'm amazed we haven't done this film, put that way.
Ivan Reitman didn't do Caddyshack, did he? So
no, and that was 17. That was like 1980, I think. All right, I'm going to give you the third build star. Can't give you the other ones. Kelly Preston, and she is fucking smoking in this film.
Fucking Kelly Preston, Lady in Red.
There's a big hint in the fact that I couldn't give you the top 2.
No, I know. Fucking Kelly Preston, as in Kelly Preston from Weird Science.
Kelly, is she in Weird Science?
No, that's Kelly LeBrock. Fuck.
Kelly LeBrock, no, Kelly Preston.
Who the fuck is Kelly Preston?
All right, I'm going to give you the film. It's Twins. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito.
Oh, shit. Kelly Preston. Yes.
Absolute smoke show. So that's going to be loads of fun. So do join us for that. But any other business before we wrap this up?
No, nothing today.
Cool.
As I'll say, as always, please drop us a message if you want us to talk about anything on the podcast with us, or even if you just want to give us recommendations. Send us messages via your podcast listener of choice now. You can do that because we've actually moved up in the world. Or you can send us an email, or you can just contact us on the socials.
Cool. Okay, I've been Liam. He's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers for listening, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now. My kid still goes on about bed people. I think I've ruined him.
Jesus Christ. Horrifying.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.